So, a couple months ago, I stumbled across an anime called Dragon Raja, and let me tell you this. It is an absolute trip. I attempted to write about it shortly after watching it the first time. Unfortunately, I ran into a small snag. Every time I attempted to convey my thoughts in words, they came out as an incoherent mess of sentences and phrases.
Have you ever had a dream that you could do so?
I'll be honest, Dragon Raja beat me. But I have returned once again to make a second attempt. Let's see how this goes. The first thing you will notice about Dragon Raja is that the first episode is one of those mini-movie style episodes, which is usually a good sign. The second thing that hits you, and when I say hits you, I really mean clocks you across the face, are the visuals. My god, are the visuals superb. There's so much vivid imagery, changes in art style, detail and depth. I mean, just look at this. It's not perfect. Sometimes, especially when viewed on a computer monitor or large screen, the CGI environments and cropping and pasting jobs look a little obvious. However, when viewed on your phone, which is how I watched it, these faults become much less apparent. That said, I still think the visuals are excellent. Dragon Raja has this wonderful romantic art style. Everything is so grand, it really is just a joy to watch. It honestly just blows you away, especially on a second watch through when you have the time to appreciate the scenery. Complementing the visuals is an incredibly good soundtrack with an absolute banger of an opening. And the music is not just good, it's used effectively. It flourishes and falls quiet when necessary, and it complements the scene it's accompanying perfectly. The sound design is also great. To top it all off, the animation is very solid, it's fast, fluid, and exciting when it needs to be. I really can't put it into words how good the technical and artistic merits of Dragon Raja are. You will just have to trust me or watch it for yourself. It is worth a watch just for these aspects. However, now that I have gushed over the visuals and audio for long enough, let me talk about Dragon Raja's one tiny little issue. Its narrative, or more specifically, its pacing. It is way too fast. Don't get me wrong, I really like its narrative. While it's incredibly poorly conveyed, it seems interesting. There's some nice mystery, intrigue, and the narrative, much like those wonderful visuals, has a lovely romantic flair to it. It's grand and fantastic to the point of absurdity. However, there are some mysterious narrative undertones. What's going on with the main character's elusive brother and his absent parents? What does all the strange imagery mean? I found all of it very intriguing, and that's how I should feel whilst I'm listening to a story. The issue with Dragon Raja is definitely the pacing. It moves at breakneck speeds. It makes it insanely difficult to understand what's going on in the moment. What ends up happening is that a scene starts, and you unknowingly spend the first half of it wondering where you are, who's talking about whom, what the connection was to the last scene. Before you know it, half the scene is passed and you basically miss the entire first half. So you spend the second half attempting to infer what the first half was about, leading to more problems later as you attempt to understand the next scene. Let me give you an example. This is the description on Crunchyroll and MyAnimeList. I would imagine MyAnimeList copied Crunchyroll's description, but I don't know if they wrote it themselves or if it was submitted by the studio. I hope it wasn't, because if it was, this just makes things more confusing. I have watched through Dragon Raja twice, and while I am still a little bit confused, at least about the details, I think I understand what's generally going on. That said, I have no idea what this blurb is talking about. What grim truth behind humanity's war against the dragon race is it talking about? Okay, against my better judgment, I'm going to try to briefly describe one series of events from Dragon Raja. Let's see how this goes. A professor from the dragon hunting school named Lars, two students named Yi Sheng and Aki, and a ridiculously high-tech looking airship are attempting to explore a dragon's palace, which is underwater by the way. Sheng and Aki are diving, swimming around looking for the entrance. Sheng uses his snake Shengling, which is his superpower, to speed up the process. However, after a couple of seconds, he reports that thus far, all that he has found is a huge amount of gold 40 meters below.
We're rich! Diamond! Ah!
Which is nice to know. Never comes up again. Doesn't seem to be important, but as I said, that's nice to know. The entrance has a door, so logically, there must be a key. Fortunately, Professor Lars has a key, which turns out to be this baby, because apparently this baby possesses high purity dragon's blood. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Lars puts the baby in a box, dives down to Sheng and Aki, performs some magic tricks, and allows the baby to open the door.
What?
By the way, apparently the lock on the door is this guy, who is, quote, one of the fire eaters. What is a fire eater? They get inside the palace, explore a bit, explain that the Dragon Emperor must have been a skilled mechanist, which confused me greatly because at this point I didn't know dragons could take human form. Sheng finds a weird looking egg thing, Aki triggers a trap, and the palace begins collapsing and it looks like they won't be able to escape. The students back at the school have to find a way out of the palace. Lu Mingfei, the main character, uses some ability and finds a solution, which is forwarded to Lars, who shows the solution, naturally, to the baby, who draws a line on it. Apparently the line shows the way out, so Sheng and Aki begin following it, which leads Lars to begin dancing, as he is now convinced that they can escape easily. A little bit later, Lars abruptly has an aha moment and realizes that things are dire again. Apparently, when he was calculating how much air they needed to escape the palace, he forgot to factor in the swim from the bottom of the sea to the surface, which is impressively stupid. Anyway, Aki makes it to the surface, gives the egg thing to somebody on an escape boat, and immediately gets dragged underwater by a massive sea dragon thing.
Just to suffer.
Does anybody else ever wonder how this thing pulled this tiny woman underwater like this? What did it use? Where did it grab her? I assume it just opened its mouth for the whirlpool bit, but what about the first bit? Lars, in a fit of revenge, says the famous line, "Kakatakoi," and begins shooting the sea dragon with a sniper like a badass. They drop some bombs, the dragon eats them, they then blow them up, and then say, "It worked," which is a bad idea, because of course it didn't. Somehow, using its tail, the dragon then reaches up onto the airship, stabs Lars's assistant, dragging her into the water, and then begins chuckling ominously. The dragon then shows them that one of the bombs that it swallowed is stuck in its teeth and dares them to blow it up. However, Lars explains that it intends to open its mouth, essentially using the bomb to create a napalm cannon, which will vaporize them. They attempt to flee, as you naturally would, but the dragon gives chase. Lars, conveniently, suddenly remembers that all of this is taking place in a dam, and if they're in a dam, that means there's a gate, and they can close the gate on the dragon and theoretically kill it. So, they fly through the gate, wait till the dragon follows, they then blow up the bomb, Lars performs more magic, and the key then closes the gate, because of course it can, which stabs the dragon, killing it. Unfortunately, the explosion, which seemed unnecessary by the way, it seems to have been Lars's power that pushed the dragon back into the gate, so I don't know why they blew up the bomb. Anyway, the explosion causes a tooth of the dragon to comically shoot out of its mouth, through the air, into the airship directly into Lars's chest. The principal of the school then later arrives and tells the dying Lars that doctors are on their way. However, Lars reminds him that it won't help because he's been inflicted with dragon's poison from the tooth, I assume, and it can't be healed. This is the first time we hear about this, which is, once again, I suppose it's nice to know eventually. Lars then has a final chat with the principal as he dies, with his final words being, "But please tell Nono," another student, "to pick a new professor as her advisor." That's the sequence of events. Did any of that make sense? I don't think it did. I don't know exactly what the problem is. Filler is common in anime, as it is elsewhere, but some anime have the opposite problem, like Dragon Raja. Anime like Sword Art Online Season 1 and The Promised Neverland Season 2 are perfect examples. Both are far too short and needed many more episodes to tell their stories properly. Instead, they resorted to watering down large chunks of their stories, removing considerable segments, and employing other time-saving strategies like constant Deus Ex Machinas. But whatever Dragon Raja has done feels different. I can't really explain it. It's as if they wrote a story and then randomly cut out every second or third scene, which results in a narrative that feels incredibly disjointed and confused. At first I thought they didn't have the budget to create a longer season, so they made as many episodes as they could afford, but that seems unlikely. It seems more likely that the season is 17 episodes long because they couldn't restrict themselves to the usual 12 or 13. As I may have mentioned, the visuals and technical aspects of the show are excellent and look expensive, so money doesn't seem to be the issue unless they blew the entire budget on visuals, which I suppose they could have done. It might be a writing issue then. The dialogue is solid in places, but alright on the whole. That said, they do spell a few things out that they really don't need to, and some of the lines are, well, questionable. Maybe they had a good idea for a story broadly, but couldn't come up with the details. But once again, that seems wrong. There's just too much detail in places, and the narrative behind the pacing jank is really intriguing. At least I think so. The last thing that it might be is a problem with the director, or more specifically the direction. So often, a huge number of things happen in a very, very short period of time, communicated in a set of really truncated scenes at that breakneck pace I mentioned, only for the pacing to slow right down to normal speeds, resulting in a standard, well-paced scene which ends up being great. I'm thinking maybe the director had trouble deciding what to focus on, or maybe there was some creative fixations on certain scenes resulting in others getting less attention. At the end of the day, I don't really know. In any case, I really enjoyed Dragon Raja, pacing, jank and all. I watched it twice and enjoyed it just as much the second time round as I did the first. If you are looking for something to watch, I would highly recommend you give it a try, at least for the spectacle of the visuals and the audio. Alright, well, those are my thoughts. Hopefully, they were easier to follow than Dragon Raja's, which is not a high bar, but baby steps. Anyway, if you have any thoughts of your own, feel free to leave a comment. I would love to read them. I hope you liked the video. If you did, feel free to let me know. Leave a like or subscribe if you wish. I'm going to go now. I hope you have a pleasant day. Goodbye.